Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we are going over 18 waiver must-adds before week number 7. I do apologize before we begin. I am a little sick, so my voice sounds off. That's exactly why, but we're pushing through. We got to get this video out by Tuesday. We're starting it off today with Roschon Johnson. Now, a concussion caused him to miss Sunday's game against the Minnesota Vikings. Khalil Herbert is, as you guys probably know, already on IR. So somebody is going to have to step up in that spot in his replacement. Now, in Sunday's game against the Vikings, due to Herbert and Johnson both missing, D'Onta Foreman and Darrynton Evans were the running backs that had to take over in their places. They both played pretty mediocre, if you're asking me. Definitely didn't do enough to boost them up the depth chart at all. So the job should clearly be Roschon Johnson's for at least the next couple of weeks until Khalil Herbert is back. Foreman ran 15 times in that game for 65 yards, while Evans ran 9 times for 32 yards. Both players ended up having 1 catch for 2 yards as well. If Roschon Johnson can make the most of these games while Khalil Herbert is on IR, I do believe that you could have a solid rest of season reliable running back option on your hands here. So far this season, Johnson is averaging 4.9 yards per carry, which is awesome. He was also involved a good amount in the passing game, even while Khalil Herbert was leading him in snaps and carries, especially in week number 1 when he caught 6 passes for 35 yards. He is a must-add in all leagues, especially in PPR, in my opinion. Now, the only negative thing about Roschon Johnson picking him up is that we don't know how long Justin Fields is going to be out, and Tyson Bagent, I don't know how well he is going to play. But even if he doesn't play the greatest and he checks the ball down a lot to Roschon, we'll take that all day of the week. But Justin Fields looks to be out for quite an extended period of time, so I would expect him to miss at least a couple of weeks. Next up, we got Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel continues to provide good fantasy value and is definitely solidifying himself as the clear wide receiver number 2 on this Commanders football team. The past 4 out of 6 weeks, Samuel has over 11 PPR fantasy points in the past 2 games. He's also found the end zone, which is, of course, always a bonus for fantasy football. Still ended up playing less snaps once again than Jahan Dotson did and running less routes in that game on Sunday, but that doesn't matter because Dotson is not getting any looks on this offense for some reason from Howell. Samuel is clearly making better usage of his playing time, and also he is super fast, super quick guy, super explosive guy. Even though Sam Howell on Sunday only attempted 23 passes, he still made the most out of those attempts by throwing 3 touchdowns, which is definitely impressive considering that the Falcons had a top 5 passing defense heading into that game on Sunday. And the fact that Howell only had 151 yards in this game should make you feel pretty good about Curtis Samuel because he still put together a valuable fantasy performance for you. He only saw 4 targets on Sunday, but in shootout games, of course, Samuel is going to be catching much more passes. There's going to be that many more opportunities for him to thrive. Next up is Rashee Rice. I'm not really sure how Rashee Rice isn't rostered in over 50% of leagues right now. Since none of these Kansas City wide receivers have stepped up consistently, Rashee Rice looks like their best chance at a wide receiver 1 this season, other than, of course, the main option in Travis Kelce. Rice saw an increase in his snap percentage on Thursday night against the Broncos, which was, of course, a good thing to see. Week number 5, he played on just about 33% of snaps, and then this past Thursday night, that went up to just about 50%. So we're moving in the right direction here for Rice. Mahomes was also talking about Rashee Rice after the game, how he was so explosive when he got the ball in his hands. He just needs more touches at this point in time, and I do believe that will come these next upcoming weeks here. If he can get to around that 60-70 percentile mark on the snap count, eventually, I think we're going to be in a great spot for Rashee Rice and every fantasy owner that has him. Another thing that we mentioned a lot in past videos when talking about this Chiefs team is their schedule for the rest of the season is one of the easiest that I've taken a look at so far this year. The next 3 games include the Chargers, Denver Broncos, and Miami Dolphins. All 3 of these defenses can easily be thrown on, especially when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. Next up, we have Josh Downs on the Indianapolis Colts. Although Downs saw his worst average yards per catch on Sunday against the Jaguars, he still finished this game with 13.1 PPR fantasy points thanks to a touchdown and saw 8 targets, which was only behind Michael Pittman Jr. on the Colts offense. Normally, Downs provides a nice downfield threat for this Colts offense, and I think most games he will, but that just wasn't open on Sunday. That just wasn't the case against this Jags team. The good news here is that he is consistently getting more playing time, as he was on the field for 61 out of 78 possible snaps and ran 49 out of a possible 60 routes this Sunday. Once again, only trailing Michael Pittman Jr. in those categories. Obviously, that should be expected. Michael Pittman Jr. is the #1 wide receiver on this team and will be for the rest of the season. But we're just hoping that Downs can take over that #2 spot. I must say, over these next couple of weeks here, he has a few factors working against him. Number one is that their schedule is super tough, going up against the Browns and the Saints in the next 2 games. Number two is that Josh Downs is clearly not even a top 3 option on this Colts offense. Right now, I would say it's Michael Pittman Jr. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is going to get more and more involved as the weeks go on. He should be actually the #1 option on that team eventually. And then Zach Moss is balling out right now. I can't take anything away from Zach Moss right now. Number 3 is that Gardner Minshew played absolutely terrible against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which definitely concerns me because just like we mentioned, the next few games are very tough pass defenses. If he can't get by that, then Josh Downs is going to be in trouble these next couple of weeks. But rest of the season, though, I do think you should go out and roster this guy for sure. Next up, we got Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne, in my opinion, is really the only wide receiver in fantasy on the Patriots worth rostering. All right, he saw 11 targets while the next highest wide receiver on the Patriots on Sunday sat at 3. That's ridiculous. Okay, what was good to see from the Pats in this game, though, was finally getting Ramondre Stevenson involved in the passing game. That was missing all year so far until this game. So Ramondre Stevenson owners, we were talking about how poorly he was playing these past couple of weeks. Finally back on track. You love to see that. But back to Kendrick Bourne. He finished the game with 19.3 PPR fantasy points, led the team in snaps with 56 out of a possible 60, and led the team in routes with 34 out of 37 ran. The reason for picking up Bourne is just simply because he is the best option on this team. The reason to not go out and pick up Kendrick Bourne is, of course, because the Patriots aren't a trustworthy offense at the moment. They are not consistent whatsoever. But if you need a guy to play during a bye week, then sure, absolutely go up and pick up Kendrick Bourne. But I would not be starting him at the moment every single week because he's bound to have those bad weeks. If the Patriots offense as a whole struggles, you're not going to get anything going with any of these wide receivers, let alone Kendrick Bourne. Next up, we have Jameson Williams. Williams finished the game on Sunday against the Bucs with 13.3 PPR fantasy points on 2 catches for 53 yards and that long touchdown, of course. Now, you might think, okay, why do I want a guy that only had 2 catches and maybe he just caught a lucky touchdown pass? You know, you're saying that's not going to happen every single game. Well, that's the thing. He's only going to get more and more and more involved in this offense as the weeks go on. That's one of the main reasons why he was drafted, right? To be their deep threat guy. And this offense is already clicking on all cylinders. You just add another option to that and they become that much better. He pulled off a good fantasy day, only playing 16 out of a possible 70 snaps and running 9 out of a possible 48 routes on offense. Since he was only targeted 3 times in that game, that means he was targeted on 33% of his routes. Of course, this is an insanely small sample size, and I don't expect him to be targeted on 33% of his routes when he plays the entire game, but you totally get my point here. All right, he should slide into a key role right behind Amon-Ra St. Brown within these next couple of weeks here and should be a top priority on waivers if he is not claimed just yet. Next up is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt looked great against a pretty good San Francisco run defense, finishing with 12 rushes for 47 yards and 3 catches for 24 yards and a touchdown to go along with it this past Sunday, equaling 16.1 PPR fantasy points. You'll take that every day of the week. If you have Kareem Hunt in best ball, I doubt you were playing him in standard leagues, though, this week. At this point, I still think Ford has a slight edge, and he's slightly the guy to own in fantasy right now. But it's very close, and Hunt's snaps are rising, so that could certainly change over these next couple of weeks. Ford played 38 snaps to Hunt's 28, and both guys ended up running the same amount of routes at 13. The good news for both of these running backs is that since the Browns' defense is so good, it keeps opposing teams off the field more and keeps the Browns' offense on the field more. So they're likely to not get blown out, number one, and number two, get a lot of carries in that process. Of course, week 4 was an exception because Deshaun Watson was not playing. When Deshaun Watson comes back, this offense should get a lot better. And even if the Browns do find themselves down in games at any point in time, Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford are both great pass-catching running backs. So another interesting note here is that Kareem Hunt actually played more in short yardage situations than Jerome Ford, and then Ford dominated those snaps on early down plays and on third downs. This could potentially mean that Kareem Hunt is the guy they're going to go to in the red zone and at the goal line, which would be huge for his fantasy value heading forward. Next up, we got Tyjae Spears. Spears once again outsnapped Derrick Henry on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens, but you would not know that by any means based on the box score alone. Henry finished with 19.3 PPR fantasy points, while Spears finished with a measly 7.3. Now, the snap count was 31-29 in Spears' favor, and Spears also ran more routes in that game. I completely understand that Henry, he finished with the better day, but I'm not feeling great about Derrick Henry. I just can't get behind it. Am I crazy that I'm not super excited about Derrick Henry right now? Would you guys be trading him off to your league mates, or am I the only one that would be doing that? All right. Henry is still clearly the guy that they're going to lean on when they're winning games. I just don't know how often the Tennessee Titans are going to win games. Like, he didn't have a lot of carries in this game. All right, I want to see him get around that 20 carry mark, and then I can believe in Derrick Henry on a weekly basis. But are we going to really get that? I think, like I said, if you can upgrade that running back position, personally, I would be going out and trying to trade Derrick Henry away at one of his highest values for someone like DeAndre Swift, someone like Isaiah Pacheco, someone like Jonathan Taylor. I would certainly do all those trades in a heartbeat, a one-for-one trade, because those guys provide much better pass-catching value and are on much better offenses than this Tennessee Titans team. Next up, we got Sam Howell. Now, the completion percentage wasn't anything spectacular for Howell, as it was the lowest that he's had so far this year, but he just somehow gets the job done on a weekly basis. Every single game so far, except for the Buffalo Bills, he's been a fantasy relevant quarterback, if you can believe it. This past week, he went up against the Atlanta Falcons, who heading into that game were a top 10 defense against opposing quarterbacks, and he played pretty well. He ended up throwing 3 touchdowns and finishing the day with 18.34 fantasy points. Of course, that's nothing to scream over. I'm not getting super hyped over here saying Sam Howell's the next coming of, he's the next Patrick Mahomes out here. No. But it was good enough for a top 4 quarterback finish on the week going into the Monday night game, at least that is. Especially when there are bye weeks consistently screwing people over on a weekly basis. If you don't have another quarterback rostered, you might be in trouble. You might have to pick up a guy like Sam Howell, and if I'm playing him based on a certain matchup, the next 4 games he ends up going against the Giants, the Eagles, the Patriots, and the Seahawks, who are mostly all teams that you can pass on. I don't mind playing them. If I need a guy, I want to plug in Sam Howell, I don't hate it. Next up, we got Jordan Mason and then maybe Elijah Mitchell. McCaffrey went down with an oblique injury Sunday against the Browns in the third quarter, returned to the game, and then eventually was ruled out for the rest of the contest. I believe he's getting an MRI. As this video is being made, we'll find out more news probably on Tuesday or Wednesday at some point, I'm guessing. The next man up in this situation right now, I would believe, has to be Jordan Mason right now. Assuming McCaffrey misses time, of course, you're not playing either of these guys in your lineups if McCaffrey doesn't miss any time. Mitchell hasn't really played too much in these past couple of weeks due to a knee injury, and Jordan Mason actually led the snap count once McCaffrey left the game, 15-2 over Elijah Mitchell on Sunday against the Browns. But we have seen in the past how Shanahan does like to involve Elijah Mitchell when he is healthy. If you made me make the decision of picking up either Jordan Mason or Elijah Mitchell, though, I would probably prioritize Jordan Mason. I feel like you just need a piece of this San Francisco 49ers offense. They are so explosive, such a good offense, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league right now, even though they still lost to the Browns, who have a tough defense. I think they're going to have a lot of bounce back games in a row. Okay, let's just say that. I think they're going to keep putting up a lot of points on teams, and Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, both solid waiver ads this week. Next up is Devin Singletary. Now, Dameon Pierce once again was having a mediocre day against the New Orleans Saints, which opened up the door for Devin Singletary to get a little more action than normal. All right, Pierce finished with 13 carries for 34 yards and 0 catches, 3.4 PPR fantasy points. That's a pathetic outing from Dameon Pierce, while Devin Singletary finished with 12 carries for 58 yards and 1 catch. Not much better, but it's better than Dameon Pierce's stat line. The concerning part for Pierce owners is that Devin Singletary outsnapped Dameon Pierce 34-21 in this matchup. The offensive line has obviously looked horrible so far this season, and their passing game has clearly been more effective thus far. That being said, it would not hurt at all to pick up Devin Singletary just in case he keeps being more productive than Dameon Pierce and getting a larger passing role than Dameon Pierce in these upcoming weeks. Texans have a bye week in week number 7 also, so I don't think anybody's going to be going out and prioritizing getting Devin Singletary. So if you want to spend zero fantasy waiver dollars to pick up Devin Singletary, then I would do so. Next up, we have Keaton Mitchell. Mitchell is an exciting rookie who just got off the IR due to a shoulder injury. He was actually activated in week 6, but did not play at all. As we have seen these past couple of weeks, neither Justice Hill or Gus Edwards have really brought that crazy spark to this Baltimore Ravens running game so far. They're both playing okay, but nothing extraordinary by any means. That is where Keaton Mitchell could come in handy down the line. I'm not saying he's going to break out next week, but he could be a solid stash for later on this year. He ran a 4.37 40-yard dash at the combine, and his burst score, according to Player Profiler, is almost in a territory with very few other running backs in the league currently. So definitely a guy to keep your eye on. J.K. Dobbins was, of course, supposed to be the main guy in Baltimore's backfield to start the year off, but clearly that didn't go to plan as he tore his Achilles out for the year. Not saying, like I said, not saying Mitchell is going to explode in the next game or two, but he's definitely worth a stash if you need a running back. If you need that running back that could spark something on your roster. Next up, we got Craig Reynolds. We just received news on Monday that Dan Campbell said he expects David Montgomery to miss a little bit of time due to a rib cartilage injury. If Jahmyr Gibbs, for whatever reason, can't suit up in week number 7 against the Ravens, that's going to mean that Craig Reynolds is in line to start in the backfield. Reynolds really did struggle running the ball against the Tampa Bay Bucks, but did kind of save his fantasy day if anybody was even playing him. 2 catches for 28 yards, though, after averaging just 1.5 yards per carry on 10 attempts. So definitely a rough day on the ground, but like I said, saved it a little bit in the air. He's not a bad ad just in case that situation plays out. Like I said, Montgomery and Gibbs are inactive in week 7. Also, this Lions offense is never a bad bet. If you want to get a little bit of a replacement for David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs in their absence, then Craig Reynolds would be that guy. Although if Gibbs does end up playing in week 7, which I personally think he will, this ad is not going to be nearly as significant. So that's why it's this far down the list here. And then we have Jaleel McLaughlin really providing a spark on this Broncos offense right now. I'm not getting blown away by Javonte Williams or Samaje Perine at the moment. I'm really not. I think this number 1 job for the Broncos running back is really still up for grabs at the moment. Jaleel McLaughlin has played well over these past couple of weeks and should continue to see an increased amount of snaps if the Broncos are smart. So I would definitely go out and get Jaleel McLaughlin before he does actually really explode. He's still not rostered in over 50% of leagues somehow. Now we're going to head on to some honorable mentions here. We're starting it off with Jonnu Smith. The past couple of weeks, Desmond Ridder has really been loving his tight ends all of a sudden. I don't know what is happening with this Falcons offense all of a sudden, but Smith ended up finishing with 4 catches for 36 yards and a touchdown against the Commanders this past Sunday. And he scored at least 8 fantasy points in 5 out of 6 games so far this season. While I'm still not crazy, of course, about this Falcons offense, I do not trust him as far as I can throw him. And I can't throw him very far. That's a lot of people to throw at once, so I'm probably not throwing him. They've definitely taken a step forward these past couple of weeks, finding some consistent options in Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. Will that continue? You guys got to decide if you want to pick up Jonnu Smith or even play Kyle Pitts or Drake London. Next up, we got Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed has been an absolute playmaker, electric guy this year when he finds the ball in his hands. This past week, he hauled in 2 passes for 85 yards and a touchdown. Also took 2 carries for 18 yards. Certainly, I think he's worth a roster spot in deeper leagues and 1,000,000,000% in dynasty leagues. You need to have this guy. But the only problem I have with Shaheed right now in those smaller leagues, 8 to 10 man redraft leagues, is his target inconsistencies so far this year. It seems like every time he's about to get going for multiple weeks, he's going on a run here. the Saints just don't utilize him the same way the next week. He proceeds to do this over and over and over again. The process just repeats itself. One good thing, though, about this past week's game is that he also played almost as many snaps as Michael Thomas and Chris Olave. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. If his snap count continues to be that high, it would be great. If you want to take a shot on Rashid Shaheed scoring, I do see the appeal. On a weekly basis, though, I'm not starting him every single game. I'll tell you that much. Next up, we got Michael Mayer. The Raiders have been lacking that consistent tight end option for a while now, and this is exactly the spot that Mayer could fill. He could come in and take that spot up. He played 57 out of a possible 70 snaps on Sunday against the Patriots, finished with 12.5 PPR fantasy points. My issue here is not at all with Michael Mayer. It's with the Raiders team right now. With Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Josh Jacobs all needing the ball in their hands at certain points throughout the game, it's going to be a little bit tough for Mayer to find consistent targets on a weekly basis. But I do believe he is a good, very deep league tight end ad at the time being. Also, we don't know what's happening with Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, he could be out for, a while. He could be on IR. So the quarterback situation, maybe it's Brian Hoyer, maybe it is Aiden O'Connell right now. That's in jeopardy as we speak as well. And lastly, we have Keaontay Ingram. With James Conner being on IR for at least the next 3 games here, the Cardinals' backfield seems to be very split currently. Sunday against the Rams, DeMercado led the snap count 33-28 over Ingram, and Damian Williams got involved for 13 snaps as well. The interesting part was that DeMercado actually was only getting more snaps in the second half when they were trailing the game by a lot already. So this points to Ingram getting more carries when the games are close, but I'm not too sure I really want anything to do with this Cardinals backfield until James Conner comes back. I'd probably be trading for James Conner actually, because he should have that number 1 role locked down when he returns. Their schedule is brutal these next couple of games. They end up going against the Seahawks, Ravens, Browns, and Falcons, who all have good run defenses. So it's not looking too good for Keaontay Ingram, Emari DeMercado, and Damian Williams in this backfield. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy this video, as always, make sure to drop a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Also, I just recently created a Twitter or an X. If you guys want to head over there, ask me any more questions. I'm going to be tweeting more in-depth or advanced type stats on a weekly basis. If you want to go follow, I'll leave the link in the description and the pinned comment below. Anyways, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.